Copy and paste of a previous post, because I don't enjoy typing this story out. Cop here. I responded to a child not breathing. On arrival, I find a 2-year-old girl, wearing only undies, unconscious on the cement kitchen floor. She is freezing cold, pale, foaming at the mouth, and barely breathing. I spent the next 6 hours by her side as detectives learned that Mom's boyfriend was pissed that she wouldn't stop crying. So he picked up by the waist, over his head, and slammed her on the ground. Twice. When Mom got out of the shower, he told her she wasn't breathing right. Mom uses the girl's asthma inhaler twice and waits. An hour and a half later, she goes to her neighbor's house to use her phone to call her mom. The neighbor overhears the conversation about baby not breathing and takes it upon herself to call 911. The girl received a basal skull fracture, which caused little seizures. She vomited several times, but lay on her back for over an hour. She aspirated the vomit repeatedly. For nearly 2 hours, that little girl lay on the ground with her skull bleeding into her brain, her body temp being sucked into the floor, trying to breathe vomit. And for the next 6 hours I sat with her, and held her hand, stroked her hair, and watched her die, hoping that her little brain shut down and blocked out everything that was happening. That case still makes me tear up to this day, and it was one of the 3 worst calls I've ever been on. I don't know how someone can do that to a baby. Asterisk edit. I apologize for the lack of clarity. I wrote this last night through tear-filled eyes, and then went to bed. Paramedics were called. They arrived seconds after I did. They did everything they could. I rode in the ambulance with her to the hospital. I stayed with her the entire time, because in a possible death investigation, we keep an officer with the person throughout, until the medical examiner takes custody of the body. So I stayed with her in the ER, went to CT scan with her, etc. Her little brain had been deprived of oxygen too long. There was no surgery that could save her. BF fled during the initial chaos of officers and medics arriving. He was caught later that night, without incident. He was charged and convicted, but that doesn't undo what he did. How do you deal? That's a good one. You come home and hug your own kids. You have a beer with the other guys that were on scene. You realize that if it weren't for your job, assholes like that would get away with it. And then you get in your car and do it all again tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Be good to each other. Stories like this, and others can be found at /Tales from the Squad Car. Edit. Hey guys, thanks a bunch for the overwhelming response and support. Quit with the gold. If you want to pay it forward, next time you're in line with a cop, buy his coffee or soda, and say thanks for what you do. Those little moments really do help. My dad is a firefighter. He responded to a case like this one, but the girl was 5 years old. The father would beat her, and the mother would neglect her. The parents split, and the abusive father took her and married an even more aggressive stepmother when child turned 4. The father admitted to beating the child at least once a day, because she did things like have bathroom accidents. They never taught her to properly use the bathroom. They used bats, belts, and anything within arm's reach. The child was malnourished and neglected, with healing bruises and fresh bruises. 3 days prior to her death, the couple refused to clothe and bathe her, leaving the child to live in her own feces. The child's last day was spent in her room, unfurnished and covered in feces. Beaten, then left unattended as the couple went to work. Upon return, her dad whipped her with his belt for the last time. When my dad responded, he went to a room layered in feces with blood splattered on the wall and floor where the girl had laid still, covered in her own blood and vomit, while experiencing seizures due to the trauma. As a first responder, it was my dad's duty to save her. He gave her CPR, frantically trying to do everything in his power to save her as if the child was his own. There was nothing he could do but watch her die slowly as he held her. Later investigation found that the child had been whipped and hit in her chest, knocking her to the ground. The father then proceeded to stomp on her chest and head, causing her ribs to break, along with brain bleeding and a dislocated shoulder. Although my state ended the death penalty in 1957, the crime had occurred on federal property, and thus the father was up for the death penalty. This caused the trial to drag on for 10 years. For each of those years, my father deteriorated in his mental state and developed alcohol abuse, later leading to a few small domestic violence cases. He suffers from PTSD now, and the father I grew up with is no longer present. Hats off to you for keeping your sanity. I honestly feel that the majority of the people I arrest aren't bad people and aren't criminals, per se. That being said, there are a couple dozen arrests that stand out in my mind. One in particular sticks out. Not necessarily the worst, just one that sticks out the most. The suspect was approximately 40-ish, had a 15-year-old daughter, was a methamphetamine addict, lived in complete squalor. They get evicted and daughter gets taken into state custody. After a year of counseling finally discloses that her father would inject her with methamphetamine and rape her. Therapist comes to us, and we bring her in for an interview. This girl, I believe may have been 17 by now, is no girl. She's intelligent, articulate, and lived well beyond her years. She details in remarkable detail how one night her father injects methamphetamine into right forearm. This happens several times. One night he is extremely high, gets her high. As she is walking into the kitchen, he pins her against the wall and rapes her. This begins to happen on a regular basis. Suspect eventually convinces daughter to start bringing friends home. Suspect injects friends with methamphetamine and rapes them as well. Daughter continues to bring different friends home, so that dad will rape the friends rather than her. Eventually, when they get evicted, father kicks daughter to the curb, and two of daughter's friend go live out of dad's car in a nearby park. While these kinds of things happen all the time, it was the victim that struck me. When asked why she didn't tell someone, she replied, "The first time it happened when he pinned me against the wall, all I could remember thinking over and over, this is my life now. This is my life now. I will remember those words for the rest of my life, as clear as they were said to me. I can still hear the inflection and tone in her voice." About 8 months later, I ran into one of the other victims, the daughter's friend. After dad was evicted, he lived out of his car with her. She was 15-ish at the time. Initially, she was going to cooperate in prosecution, however, disappeared. She's 18 to 19 now. When I last saw her, I didn't recognize her until I saw her identification. Heroin, methamphetamine, and the streets have destroyed her. She won't be alive much longer. My sister marries the biggest losers. My ex-bro-in-law purposefully works minimal hours in a seasonal business, so he can collect unemployment for half the year and receive government assistance. Mooches and lives next door to his parents, and he is 50 years old. Smokes weed all day. Can barely put food on the table. Uses his kids, my nephew, to help pay the mortgage, and the kid is worried about moving out at 20 years old because dad won't be able to afford the mortgage. He could triple his salary with his business, but that would require him to work hard. He openly shares this info. I like the guy, but he is a real shit bum, and I have little respect for him. Her next spouse earned a decent living, but has multiple kids with multiple mothers, whom he never married, and has tumultuous relationships with. He mooches off my family because he has never been able to buy a house or save money because of horrible relationships with his other baby mamas, child support, bad spending habits, etc. He is a controlling, argumentative asshole and basically broke our family apart because nobody likes him or wants to be around him. He has isolated my sister from her family. Meanwhile, my sister complains that she has no family support and she is miserable. No, she did. But we could only take so much of fixing her problems and dealing with her poor choice in men. I moved 800 miles away and glad that I did. Mom/grandma is further away in FL. We both don't visit often for obvious reasons. Dad/grandpa is still alive, but he only shows up for celebrations and is out the back door for everything else and has always been that way. He is a loser as well. Surrounded by losers. Thanks for asking. I knew a guy who was born into a family that was filthy rich, and my area is very much working class, so he was very lucky. He seemed to fetishize the struggle and lived life like a bottom-of-the-barrel scumbag. His own parents were so fed up with his behavior that they bought him a house and just put him in it to get him away. I had some friends in bad home situations who got kicked out, and they moved in with him, and at that time, he was part of the group of friends, but by the time everyone moved out, they all swore they would never speak to him again. And we never did. Except for one of my friends. He suffered with schizophrenia, and because of that he decided to stop taking drugs, which were rife in that group, and the last I ever saw him he was clean. A year later I had gotten a phone call and heard he had overdosed and passed away. This absolute scumbag didn't want to take drugs alone, and because of his addictions and influence, a guy I knew passed away. I could talk for days about what else this guy has done which qualifies him as the biggest loser, but I don't think anything is worse than that. My old boss, owner of a printing company. He cheated on his wife, then hired her when he got caught so he could set her work schedule and know where she is all the time. She thinks she's keeping an eye on him. He's going out with clients every day when he had none as the company owner and had people in my position to work with the clients. Hired me and immediately decided he didn't like me. Verbally abusive every say. But that wasn't enough, so he moved me into his office so he could watch over my shoulder and insult me constantly. Sometimes he would trap me by sitting on my desk so he could berate me without distraction and slam his fist on my chair and the desk to scare me. He constantly complained because I'm a 6-foot-tall woman and he was just under 5 feet tall. This became part of his verbal abuse, saying women had no reason to be so tall, and why won't any women date short men? I pointed out he was married and shouldn't care about that. Bad move. The next day he decided to throw a party at work. I didn't want to go and continue working with my client. He came into my office and yelled at me for not attending, then gave me a beer to loosen up, which I refused, citing a medical condition. He got louder and more violent, and I cried and finally drank it, knowing it was going to make me sick. He had paperwork already drawn up and fired me on the spot for insubordination, for refusing to drink the beer, and for being intoxicated at work. I got one. In 2005 to 2008, I worked in a residential treatment center for boys who had been abused and neglected and were too intensive for foster care. We are talking kids with near irreversible mental damage based on the extreme things that they have seen and experienced. The place was out in the country a bit, so staffing could be a challenge. In general, you would take anyone that could pass the background check, and then weed them out on the first shift if they couldn't handle the job. It was a tough job. Staff were given living arrangements on site and would work 4 days on 3 days off and vice versa. A new dude and his girlfriend showed up and got jobs. Girlfriend was really cool. Good with kids, good at the job. Homeboy, on the other hand, was a straight-up loser. This is 2007, I believe, and he was hellbent and convinced that he was starting a boy band. I'm talking practicing singing and dancing instead of working, taking over communal spaces to watch boy band things, and posting incessantly on Yahoo and MySpace, looking for like-minded losers to start this boy band. In 2007, boy bands were not on the radio or popular in the least. We worked to push the guy out, told him he needed to stop practicing at work and maybe he needed to look for another job. He made it about 4 weeks before he convinced an outgoing 18-year-old with an intellectual disability that he should forego the transition plan that was made by his therapists and get an apartment with him and his girlfriend, to which he would unknowingly pay for with his SSI checks. Fast forward a month. The kid he duped is out on the streets, and boy band man has moved on to pursue his dreams elsewhere. Biggest loser I have ever encountered. Guy I used to know named Matt, dropped out of high school, lived with his mom, no job, no desire to do anything, and always had excuses for showing up late or no showing. All of this was terrible. Then he got this awful GF, Susie, who cheated on him. A mutual friend, Kyle, told him about the adultery, and then Susie said she posted that she wished Kyle would die. Matt demanded Kyle apologize to Susie for exposing the adultery. Then Matt apologized to the guy who nailed his gap-toothed GF Susie. After that, Matt would actually give Susie rides to other guys' houses, and we were all like, dude, she's definitely banging those guys. He disappeared. Then a few years ago, he contacts us all saying he's back in town because his mother died of cancer. Even though he was a rat bastard and shady as all hell, I reconnect with him and invite him over. He doesn't show up. He doesn't answer my phone calls. 9 months later, I get a random text from him. I blocked his number, but I guess it didn't carry over to my new phone, saying that he extra tickets to Rammstein. No mention of why he never showed up. Anyway, last week I found his mom didn't die after all. Them my cousin used to brag about how much weed he smoked and all the pounds he had, and would regularly talk about the people he ran up on and robbed and shit. He's implied he's done other things, But that was him over-exaggerating or not so no comment. Bro was in and out of jail regularly and even got locked up for 2 years once. Bro even got his car shot up and he was in a coma for a week once because of the shit he got himself into. Mind you, he has a son who's 7 now, and he was doing all this. 2 years ago, one of his closest friends got shot and killed, and I think he realized if he didn't clean up his act, he would be in the same position soon, and did a complete 180. He stopped selling drugs, got a regular job selling cars, and even though he's a convicted felon and will probably be on probation for most of his life, he turned his life around. So yeah, my cousin used to be the biggest loser I knew, but I'm proud of him for changing. My ex-girlfriend's mother would constantly compete with me to one-man-up me. She was in a lot of debt to the point of having an IVA, would spend her time in bed, sleeping all day only to wake up in the evening and order takeaways. She would be so lazy that she would take a bucket to bed to pee in rather than go downstairs in the night. She would spend her entire year sleeping through the day and sponging off her parents, taking 200 pounds a month from them just to order stuff she didn't need from Amazon. Made out it was for bills, even hiding the boxes from her parents and my ex, just so she could go to Las Vegas for 5 days every year and make out she was living a lavish lifestyle. She even told her sister that she needed 500 pounds for bills, and she also spent that on a holiday. Spends the majority of her day vaping and scrolling through FB talking down on others. When she had the granddaughter, she would give her hair boss and sweets for breakfast. The laziest woman I have ever met, who only had sympathy for herself. I've known 2 such losers. Both were acquaintances. They were both extremely promiscuous. They both abandoned lovely wives and kids. Similarly, they would both fuck anything that moves. One was worse than the other. Never had a job. Always asking everyone for cigarettes. Always telling people he was an actor. But he landed both beautiful women and not beautiful women. They both were the same in that regard. The guy was a mooch. His ex-wife was a doctor. I've heard him on the phone with his baby girl. Daddy will see you soon, all right? He just has some important business and is out of town. He was just at the bar drinking with US and going home with whatever woman was left at the end of the night. I get people upset at me for saying this, but he went home with some really nasty women as well as some really pretty women. I couldn't even begin to describe it. Just deadbeats who chose meaningless sex over their family, a co-worker's ex-husband. This dude is a trip, and not in a good way. First off, he's around 40, and he's 8 years older than her. He was 100% grooming her when she was a minor because they've been together since then. He looks like a default Jerry Springer male guest. Rail thin, bright eyes, stupid little peach fuzz mustache, hair sticking up in random places, wears giant, baggy clothes, etc. Mikey Day's character here looks, sounds, and acts exactly like this dude. He can't hold jobs. He either gets fired or walks out within a week every time because I don't like authority, or I just don't like people telling me what to do. I was a supervisor when she started with the company. He picked her up once and threatened to fight me because I asked her to come back into the office to get some schedule paperwork she forgot. He was like, "The fuck is he saying to you that he can't say in front of me?" Mind you, I've got half a foot and at least 100 pounds on this dude. Picking a fight wouldn't be wise regardless of the circumstances and just shows poor judgment all around. He actually tried working for us and quit within a week, managing to send his resignation to the wrong phone number, so we didn't even know he quit until he didn't show up. He's also emotionally abusive as fuck, and all of us have begged her to cut ties and contact with him, but they have kids together. When they've argued, he's threatened to kill himself if she doesn't give in to whatever he wants. He has kicked her out before in front of their kids, and she's crashed with numerous coworkers. Nothing inappropriate as far as I know. We also strongly suspect he has been sabotaging her vehicles. Despite him being unable to gain steady employment, he does not want or like her working and demands tradwife shit. I think that's what it's called. He wants her home with the kids and vulnerable. The dude is just trash. Trashiest person I've ever personally known. Unfortunately, can't make someone leave if they aren't ready. I seriously hope she understands or someone gets through to her one day and she leaves the asshole behind for good, with as little visitation and parental control on his part as possible.